Hi, I'm Lisa Frost, and welcome to Leading Teams Through COVID-19, where we're going to be talking about the 7 critical drivers to unify and lead your team through COVID-19. We're going to get started in just a second, but I suggest that you have some paper and a pen because we're going to cover a tremendous amount of material in a short period of time. And it's going to be great for you to reflect back on ways to promote more cohesion, to drive alignment, and really to get your entire team around the idea of change as related to what's going on for your organization for COVID-19. So, yes, leading teams through COVID-19. All right. I just want to say that you're in the right place if you feel like you're in uncharted territory right now. If you're feeling totally stressed out by what's going on and not really being able to anticipate what's coming down the line, or if you'd like to position yourself to make greater impact and influence with your company or with your team, you're definitely in the right spot. So in the next hour, we're going to be covering knowing and understanding what to expect from your team as you face COVID-19, knowing how to instill confidence and drive alignment on what really matters in the face of crisis, uncertainty, and change, and knowing how to stay resilient in the face of that uncertainty, whether it's from the current crisis that you're facing or from a result of any of the crises that may happen as a result of this initial one. You're going to know what support structures are non-negotiable and how to keep everyone moving forward, and then also how to increase your impact and influence with your team and with your company. So first, does any of this sound familiar? Let's see. You've never led a team through something like this before. Your team is scared and they're looking to you for answers. You're worried that your industry may be changing in ways that you can't predict. You are struggling to keep people focused and doing the work you need them to do, but it's all over the place because of so many changes in the way that you work together. You feel like everything is kind of just spinning out of control. You sense there may be opportunities here, but you're so busy putting out fires or dealing with the tactical execution of what needs to happen that you're afraid you're going to miss them. And maybe you're worried about your own health and your family's health. But you don't have time to focus on that right now because there's just too much to get done. And yet it's always there in the back of your mind. So if any of that sounds familiar, that's because that is the nature of leadership right now. But on a good day, when that's not going on, success for leaders depends on your ability to do things like lead successful change initiatives, clearly articulate goals and drive alignment, understand and manage conflict, communicate clearly and confidently under pressure, intentionally create your team culture, project mature self-confidence, master complexity, manage stress, remain flexible and adaptable, respond decisively, delegate effectively, respond rather than react, probably among many other things. And this is all regardless of external or internal circumstances. But the truth is that it's not a good day right now, is it? And it really hasn't been for the entire 2020. There's been a lot going on and it's really affecting everyone. You really never have been here before. So if you're struggling as a leader, there's good reason. Right now, we are being inundated with information about what's happening and the story is constantly shifting. So no wonder you feel like you can't get a handle on what to do about it. And there's probably a belief by maybe your organization, maybe your team, and probably certainly by you that you should have all the answers. But no one has all the answers right now. And in fact, there are too many questions and not enough answers. And it's hard to see around corners when there's nothing but corners, isn't it? So if you find yourself unsure of how to handle the complex and alarming issues that are arising in your organization and team, you are certainly not alone in this. Yeah, it's very hard to navigate change, especially in times of crisis and uncertainty. And the truth is we find ourselves in more uncertain times than ever before. So trying to lead a business or team through internal changes and pivots can be disruptive enough. Then you add in things like, let me see, pandemic, quarantine, economic downturn, shifting of customer expectations and priorities, and you suddenly have a recipe for disaster. For meeting your revenue targets, for achieving the big outcomes that you have defined for this year. So, how do you navigate these complexities and keep your team focused on the right things? How do you keep morale up when everyone's afraid? How do you navigate changes in the way that you work with each other and still adhere to your strategic plan? Your team is looking to you as a role model right now and as a rock amidst the storm. And that puts tremendous pressure on you as a leader. And you're not immune to the same fears and stress as your team is affected by. The difference is that you have to lead despite them. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm a leadership and resilience expert, and I've got 30 years experience in leadership and high performance teams, 5 years of experience leading transformational organizational change, and 12 years of experience in executive coaching with an emphasis on that transformational change, which we'll talk about in a minute. I coach leaders to use crisis as a catalyst to thrive, and we're going to talk more about what that means too. But that wasn't always true. At one point, I was an executive leader and I found myself in a unique situation that I felt completely unprepared for. So I was hired as VP of operations for a multi-million-dollar company. And it became clear shortly into my tenure there that we needed to have a radical shift in our culture. And that was amidst a market downturn and also a pivot in our entire business model. And so, as you might imagine, things were very crazy. In fact, I would say that we were really suffering instability in every region of the business. And so I sought mentorship. And as a result of that mentorship, what ended up happening for me is I was able to lead the team through an extraordinarily difficult transformative change. We went from having a team that was essentially imploding to having a team that trusted each other and worked together on the hard problems that the business faced and solved those hard problems together. And I'm going to say right now that you can do that too. And you can do that now for this particular crisis. It's just about fine-tuning your approach. So, as I mentioned, I have a background in leading and coaching teams through complex change initiatives. Now, developmental change and transitional change are kind of your regular changes that you can expect to go through at any point in time with a business. And they're fairly straightforward. But I've also had a lot of experience leading transformational change. And this type of transformative change is change that are things like a radical shift in strategy, structure, systems, operations, products, etc., in order to meet market changes, multiple strategic pivots in a short period of time, scaling infrastructure and team, usually quickly, a culture overhaul, multi-phase downsizing, permanent move to 100% remote workforce, complex merge and acquisition, and navigating loss and trust in the marketplace. And I would say most recently, navigating the changes and uncertainty around COVID-19. Now, these are probably the kinds of changes that you are going to face as a leader in the coming months and potentially years as we understand what the changing landscape looks like for COVID-19. So leaders flourish in times of crisis. I totally believe this is true. And the question for me is, how can we make it true for you? So let's just break it down. What does it mean to flourish? All right, to me, flourishing means that you are making decisions grounded in facts. You're trusting yourself and your team and having the trust of your team. You have a plan and a contingency plan. You understand the impact to your industry. You understand the risks as well as the opportunities. You're thinking strategically, not just tactically, but you do execute on a clear tactical plan. And you have the resources and support that you need. Some of you may be thinking, wouldn't that be nice? You've got the courage to take risks. You're flexible, open-minded, and resilient. So what would that feel like to be leading from that place right now? And in the face of any crisis that lies in the future. And there's something more that's not on this list, something that actually lies beyond resilience. And it's something that could take you to the next level, in fact. So we'll talk more about that later. So yeah, understanding the landscape. This is where we are. Yeah, the whole stay home, the globe staying home. Lasting economic impact. Yeah, the economic impact is going to be lasting. We're going to be dealing with this for at least the next 3 years. In that time, your company may need to go through several pivots and major change. There is no normal or business as usual. That means you're going to have to be flexible and adaptable. The pandemic is really only the first crisis. It's just the beginning. We're moving from acute to chronic. That's acute to chronic stress, anxiety, and COVID-19. And I just want to caution you really not to underestimate what anxiety, stress, and uncertainty are doing to your team right now, and potentially to you. So understanding your team. Here's the deal. Everyone had a unique experience over the past several months. And people on your team may have had wildly different experiences with COVID-19 and sheltering in place. People on your team have different perspectives on what is happening and what should be done about it. And these differences can easily lead to rifts and splits if they aren't addressed head on in a compassionate way. This can't be left to HR. It can't be swept under the rug for sure. It really needs to be addressed within the team if you want the team to perform well together. So one thing we know for sure is that most people are experiencing uncertainty, anxiety, and a lack of focus. To give you an idea of what your team may be navigating in terms of the different experiences and feelings and perspectives, different experiences, people may have had the death or sickness of a loved one, and maybe they couldn't be with them. They may have contracted COVID-19 or were scared that they had. They may be having or have had marital or parenting difficulties, a financial crisis. Maybe they were sheltering in place with extended family, which can be challenging. But maybe they were sheltering in place alone and isolated, which can also be very difficult. Different feelings. So some people may have really been feeling overwhelming anxiety, fear, and worry. Maybe they were feeling ambivalent and numb, or elated, excited, and euphoric. Any of these emotions is completely normal in the crisis that we have faced over the last several months. And waves of each of these may have been something that you've experienced. Different perspectives. So some people treated this as a staycation. Others suspected that it was all a hoax. Some people were worried that they might lose their jobs. Some were worried that this might be the collapse of a civilization. And some people may have been super angry that our rights were being violated. Many may be ready to return to work, but still others may not at all be ready to return to work. So can you see how this might lead to people on your team not being able to relate to each other as well as they did pre-COVID-19? Your people are going to be looking to you for safety, certainty, and direction. And safety is first. Safety is always first because it's one of our core needs, right? One of our basic needs. So there's 3 aspects to safety: physical, financial, and psychological. And in terms of physical safety, people are going to be wanting to know, is my health protected? Am I putting my family at risk by returning to work? Financial, is my job safe? Is the company safe? Psychological, am I safe from blame, criticism, and judgment? Am I safe from disrespect? And maybe you're actually asking these same questions right now. Yeah, they're going to be looking to you for certainty in an increasingly uncertain world. They want to know, what can I expect? Can I trust my leader to lead me? Can I trust my team to support me? Can I trust my company to protect me? Can I trust myself and my ability to know if there's a different way I need to be thinking things through? And again, I'm going to take a stab here and say that many of these questions may have gone through your mind as well. They're looking for clear and confident direction. They want to know, is there a plan? Do I feel confident in the plan? Does my leader feel confident in the plan? Do I know my part and my team's part? Am I confident in my team's ability to execute on that plan? And you might be wondering some of these too. So the first order of business is to instill confidence. What this means is that your leadership style should be compassionate, confident, and direct. That's going to instill confidence in your team members. You need to know the ins and outs of your company's strategic plan for both safety and revenue. And you need to believe in them. If you're not confident in the plan for returning safely and also for the strategic pivots that you face, your team's not going to feel confident. So you should address your concerns now. Make sure that people who need help can get it and that there's a plan for supporting them. And just be aware that the plan for physical safety needs to be communicated before people return to the business location. Otherwise, there's going to be a tremendous amount of confusion. And then finally, you're going to employ the 7 C's of unifying and leading your team, which we're going to cover right now. Okay, the 7 C's of unifying and leading your team through crisis. First of all, check yourself and your emotional reactions. Connect compassionately. Communicate directly and truthfully. Concentrate on outcomes and accountability. Create a culture based on clear agreements. Celebrate successes. Course correct as needed. So this may sound incredibly intuitive, and it is, but let's unpack what each one means. All right, check yourself and your reactions. So this is all about self-care, self-compassion, and self-awareness. Self-care. This means making time for yourself. It means managing your stress, eating well, exercising, making sure that you get lots of sleep, you're hydrating, talking to trusted others, and really getting that emotional support when you need it. It also means getting mentorship if you're in over your head. Self-compassion. So what is self-compassion? Instead of judging and criticizing yourself for various inadequacies or shortcomings, it means that you're kind and understanding to yourself and that you don't expect that you're going to be perfect. This is based on the work by Dr. Kristen Neff, and you can catch her TED Talk if you want to go deeper on this, but here's the down and dirty. So self-compassion requires self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. And so self-kindness versus self-judgment simply means that you're being gentle with yourself when you fail or feel inadequate, and that you're using positive self-talk instead of self-criticism. Focusing on common humanity, basically instead of isolating or believing that you're all alone. What this means is that you are recognizing that everyone is vulnerable and imperfect. We all make mistakes, and you're not alone. So you're human, and it's important to acknowledge how stressful and anxiety producing this has all been for you and for your team. That you have your own experience and perspective through all this, that you've been dealing with uncertainty and you've been looking for clear direction, that you're concerned about your safety, and all of this is just like your team. So you're really in it with them. And then mindfulness versus over-identification. So not exaggerating nor suppressing feelings. It really means observing your thoughts and feelings as they arise without judging them, just observing them. Okay. Self-awareness. So this essentially means that you know your strengths and weaknesses, you're asking for feedback, and you're listening to that feedback. You're developing intuitive decision-making skills, and you know your emotional triggers, you're setting boundaries, you're practicing self-discipline, and you're keeping an open mind. So can you see anything on this list that you need to shore up? Just make some notes. Connect compassionately, our second C. All right, so you're going to write this one down, because the number one thing that you can do to help your team reacclimate and build cohesion is to meet as a group and normalize the different experiences and perspectives that people had. This is going to help group members to begin to access compassion for each other. And when you meet, you're going to really want to talk about how different experiences and perspectives exist and have existed over the last several months, and how everyone thinks that they're going through it alone. You can talk to the group about what it was like for them. Ask them what it was like and how they are now, and then talk also about self-care and self-compassion with your team. So you're really going to want to check back in frequently with the group, and also one-on-one, to make sure that people are in fact acclimating. And you're going to want to support people who are feeling less resilient. So often, again, we like to leave this to HR, but a manager or leader who can help bolster their team's resilience will inspire loyalty and will create greater influence. So make sure that people have somewhere to turn for help and that you're helping them get there. Okay, showing authentic concern. What this essentially means is that you need to know what your team members value. You need to understand their resistance and identify their knowledge gaps. And then, as a reminder, you're always going to begin with self-compassion. The more compassion that you have for you, the more you're going to have for your team. So I want to just tell you about Jeremy, because some of the things that we just covered, he actually had to deal with. He's a founder of a startup that was scaling fast, and he was experiencing a lot of team infighting. Now, he went basically from our work together feeling stuck in the role of bad cop and not trusting the team to have his back, to developing a greater capacity for patience and compassion and having a team that really rallied around his vision. And through doing these things, he really learned to manage his reactions, and that allowed him to develop self-compassion and to loosen the hold of his inner critic. And become a better leader who inspires loyalty. So today he really feels a greater sense of spontaneity, of curiosity and playfulness in his leadership style. And he's also heading a startup that is successfully scaling with high performance leaders. Communicate truthfully and directly. So telling the truth without creating panic. And this is kind of my take on how to do that. You really need to communicate directly. Don't beat around the bush. Do not speculate or assume. Always check your facts. Talk about what you do know, what you don't know, and how and when you intend to get the missing information to your people. And repeat important information several times. Repeat important information several times. Be okay with human reactions. And you're going to want to manage the rumor mill. You know, there's nothing that can undo a company culture as fast as gossip and rumors flying everywhere. So pursue the concerns that people are raising and also the concerns that you just hear about. You're going to want to focus on safety and solutions. So this is how we're keeping you physically safe. This is how your job or the company is safe. But if their jobs aren't safe, don't say that they are. Tell them what you're doing to keep their job safe or what it looks like if layoffs are likely. And if the company isn't safe, if the company is actually at risk right now, focus on what you're doing to bolster the security of the company. Be as honest as possible about where the company is. You don't want to create a panic, but you don't want to mislead people either. So, and you don't want to blindside your team. So be sure to give them as much information as you possibly can, but really focus on what you're doing to course correct. You also want to talk about how you're supporting each other. You know, it's best to have clear agreements about how you're going to work together and how you're going to interact. And we'll talk more about agreements a little bit later. So, and you also want to be solution focused. So if things fell apart with deliverables in the past several weeks, acknowledge that and then talk about solutions. Clear, consistent communication is really the key. This is non-negotiable. In order to keep everyone on track, you need to have a weekly team meeting and weekly one-on-one meetings, especially right now. So if meetings are not your thing, right now people need more of that connection. They need to feel cared for. At your team meeting, you should be orienting around celebrating wins and what needs to be executed in the coming week and creating bridges between team members so that everyone has the resources they need. Your one-on-ones, you should be concentrating on how to help people get unstuck and acknowledging them for their contribution. This is going to help people continue to drive forward and stay focused on what matters. Concentrate on outcomes and accountability. So make sure that you create very clear priorities to overcome scattered focus. You're going to want no more than 3 big outcomes or primary goals with no more than 3 priorities each. That still is 9 things for people to track, so it's a lot. and any more than that is too much. And you want to encourage excellence, not perfection. Focus on the benefits of the outcomes to them. Focus on why it'll benefit them and why it's important to them. And also on what accountability looks like in action, including how you're going to support the team. So you're also going to want to check in frequently on progress. People are likely to feel different things from day to day right now, and it may be hard to concentrate or hard to focus. Maybe you've also been feeling that way. So make it easier for them by doing daily stand-ups, and they can be very quick, down and dirty to align expectations and outcomes, but something that allows them to ground in the outcomes every day. So this is Stephanie. She was experiencing the need to scale but couldn't count on the team. And it was mostly because she was micromanaging, putting out fires, and really dealing with tactical guidance. And she went from that to thinking and planning strategically and creating an agile team that can take the lead while she focuses on business development and having also a life outside of business. She began having the team own outcomes. They are now solution focused. They have a strategic plan in place along with recovery plans. She was actually able to travel for a month in 2019, and she's planning on taking 2 full months off for maternity leave this year, with minimal check-in. And this is during her busy season, and it's during COVID-19. So she's actually been able to fluidly adapt to COVID-19 and to the changes in her organization, and to shift her organization to maximize opportunities. All right, create a culture based on clear agreements. This is actually one of my favorites. Team members, okay, the agreement versus authority. Let's just cover this first, because the truth is the team members are going to be less resistant to change if you seek agreement rather than authority. And yet, we all tend to go for authority first, unless we have a really good habit of seeking agreement first. So, being at choice drives commitment and care and motivation. And we know this from years of researching motivation. Agreements are based on respect rather than control, which is one of the reasons why people are able to take to them much more easily than authority. Most of us have worked in the authority model. And frankly, when crisis hits, it feels like it's the easiest way to manage. And you're likely to need to use some authority in the coming days, but use collaboration and agreement seeking as much as you possibly can, because it yields better results over time. So remember, when team members co-create a solution, they feel a sense of ownership for making sure that solution works. Let me repeat that. When team members co-create a solution, they feel a sense of ownership for making sure that solution works. And that's really what we're going for here. Create clear agreements and be prepared for things not to go as planned. You want to make sure you're keeping drama low, and you're going to have to expect that there's going to be more people management right now. So all of that will mean that the agreements will serve you well. Know that existing tension may become amplified right now as people's usual tolerance is fairly low. So what you want to do is establish ways of operating together, agreements that include methods of communication, how we're working together, etc. You want to use agreements when delegating. And when delegating, be sure to help people think through what they need to be successful, what challenges are likely to arise, and what a recovery plan looks like. And I'll repeat that. So when delegating, be sure to help people think through what they need to be successful, what challenges are likely to arise, and what a recovery plan looks like. Be sure to check for both understanding and agreement twice. You want to look for resistance and check assumptions. And that means your assumptions and their assumptions. So check all of that out. The more transparent you can be right now with all of the agreement making, the better. Okay, let me tell you about this team of 35, because they have a really unique success story. They essentially went from a culture of throwing people under the bus, of hiding and not taking responsibility, of backstabbing and gossip and drama, of blaming others, public shaming, and working in silos. Does any of that sound familiar? They went from all of that to a culture that was based on we have each other's backs. So let's talk about how that happened real quick, because I think that it will illuminate a lot when it comes to agreements. So yeah, here are the agreements that they had. This is what we do as a culture of we have each, or as a team that has each other's backs. We check for understanding. We offer support to each other. We apologize when we make mistakes. We surface issues and concerns early. We stay solution focused. We tell the truth. We treat each other with respect. We show up and participate fully. We share responsibility for team success. And there are some don'ts as well. So let's talk about those. Here's what we don't do. We don't make assumptions. We don't take things personally. We don't undermine each other or gossip or sow seeds of discontent. We don't hide or deny responsibility. We don't blame others. We don't try to control and manipulate others. And we don't contribute to a culture of fear or negativity. So because all of these agreements were made explicit, and I want to just say that the team actually were the ones that came up with the language. So because these agreements were made explicit and became part of the culture, which means that anybody who onboarded was exposed to these agreements as well and was asked to agree to them, the culture transformed dramatically, and it truly became a we have each other's backs kind of culture. So celebrating successes, you know, you'd think that this was the most fun one, and so it would be the easiest. And yet in poll after poll, when organizations measure team morale, what they find is that usually acknowledgement and celebrating success is not happening enough. So let's talk about celebrating successes. You want to acknowledge milestones and wins publicly. You know it feels good to be acknowledged, so don't hold back. Your team really needs to feel like they're winning right now, and it's up to you to make them feel that way. So doing it publicly helps to bolster everyone. Appreciate people as often as possible for their effort, for their commitment, and for trying new things, and even for being engaged. Let's be honest. Right now, being engaged is actually a win. Encourage excellence, not perfection. And let me just say as a side note here that if you do have to reduce the number of people on your team, you really want to keep the people who do care, who want to step up, and who are committed and engaged. So make sure you're really recognizing who those people are and doing it publicly. You want to share the credit with your team so that they can feel seen and that their value is acknowledged. So if you're being recognized for something from somebody above you or from the organization as a whole, always bring your team into the mix. Always make sure that their value and their effort is recognized as well. Course corrections. This is our seventh C. Yeah, you really want to monitor progress and make sure that you're on track with outcomes regularly. And remember, you want to communicate honestly and compassionately, especially if things aren't going as planned. And if something isn't going right, don't be afraid to change gears. Don't be afraid to course correct. Remember, you may need to be making multiple pivots this year and next. So you also want to make sure that you have a plan for how the team's going to respond if something goes off the rails. This is called a course correction strategy. And when that happens, you're going to want to come together and brainstorm solutions. So put that course correction strategy into motion together. And remember, the more that your team is part of the solution, the less resistance there's going to be in rolling that solution out. Remember, they have ownership. So let's talk about Bill. Bill had a need to respond to market shifts, but his team was working in silos. And his team essentially went from a culture of hiding and not taking responsibility, where people had kind of a CYA mindset, to a culture where everyone felt valued and respected, where people frequently brought new and exciting ideas to the table and took risks and learned from their mistakes, where they collaborated cross-functionally, and again, this team ended up having each other's backs. You can see a theme here. The team ended up being able to manage multiple market shifts while working together on solutions. They took 100% responsibility for both the strategic plan and the execution of the strategic plan. And they positively positioned the company for a merge with another industry leader. So that was a big win for this team. Okay, so in a moment, we're going to cover how to step up to greater impact and influence in the midst of this crisis. But before we do, I just want to assure you that it's not time to panic, but it may be time to pivot. And if you are feeling in over your head and not really sure what that needs to look like for your organization, the main things that need to happen is that you need to be really clear on how the current circumstances are likely to affect your market and your organization and your team this year. You need to determine the strategic pivots that you need to make and make sure that those pivots are really around minimizing risk and maximizing resiliency. And you need to address any culture or leadership issues that are standing in your way of navigating this crisis. So if you're in over your head right now, if some of this is just unclear territory for you, it's probably time to get mentorship or coaching. And this is something I can definitely help you with. So if you are interested in knowing how I can help you, you can go to www.happyhealthyleaders.com/COVID-19 and apply for a COVID-19 strategic pivot and team alignment strategy session. And just to give you a little more perspective on this, I'm offering this 2020 Pivot and Alignment Strategy session for qualified businesses. This is definitely for you if you need your team aligned around strategic pivots and organizational changes that will help the business respond more agilely. If you want to keep team morale up and stay connected during changes in how you're working together, or if you are looking to build a culture based on connection, collaboration, and strong accountability, especially if that needed to be shored up pre-COVID-19 anyway. And if you'd like to use this crisis as a catalyst to thrive. And if you're a leader who values personal and professional development and has a budget for it, then this is definitely for you. So you can apply for that again at www.happyhealthyleaders.com/COVID-19. Or if you're listening to the replay, the application will actually be right on the same page. So you can just go on the page. All right, so let's talk about making a greater impact and increasing your influence. So the first thing that you want to make sure you're doing, because this is the time again for leaders to flourish, and this is what it looks like. You want to be strategic. If you're used to being in the weeds and focus on tasks and tactics with your team, you need to take time now to pull yourself out and think strategically. So being strategic is one of the biggest things you need to do. The second thing is to innovate. This is the moment for people to step up and bring something new to the table. So don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to bring new ideas forward. Don't be afraid to propose changes or share forward-thinking plans. Really be opportunity minded for the company, for your team, and for yourself. This is also the time to take greater ownership. It's a time for accountability and ownership across the board. And what that means in practice is it means leading meetings and leading strategic planning, surfacing and resolving issues, breaking down silos and bridging rifts, focusing on priorities, being engaged, responding to concerns, and creating a safe working environment for your team. So, and finally, embracing uncertainty. So this is the time to embrace uncertainty as an invitation to thrive. And I want to unpack that one a little bit because it may be a little ambiguous to you right now. Okay, I love this quote. So this is Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And he says the resilient resists shocks and stays the same. The anti-fragile gets better. What he's basically saying is that anti-fragility is beyond resilience or robustness. So what does this mean? According to Taleb, some things and people, they actually benefit from shocks, from crisis. They tend to thrive and grow when exposed to volatility and randomness and disorder. And he wrote a book called Anti-Fragile that actually talks about this in depth. But what I want to say about it is that it actually is possible to use this crisis as a catalyst to create more alignment and unity in your team than ever before. And to not only help your company and people be more resilient, but to foster more innovative thinking, more strategic alignment, and a healthier team culture, not in spite of the crisis, but actually because of the crisis. So most people right now are just thinking crisis control. And they might be thinking about getting back to normal, but that's kind of as far as it goes. But what I want to offer is that what is possible is to use this crisis as a catalyst for opportunity. Now, that's a radically different way of thinking about the crisis. The very things that scare us the most about what's happening right now, the uncertainty, the way that things seem to be falling apart. For the high performance leader, this is the very soil from which possibility is born. What is required in order to get there is an anti-fragile mindset, the ability to think strategically, and to lead transformational change. Now, if that doesn't describe the type of leader that you've been in the past, there's an opportunity right now for you to shift that. And interestingly, with mindsets, merely considering that you, your organization, and team could actually benefit from this crisis, and beginning to get curious as to how it puts you in a class of high performance leaders that most leaders don't get to in their careers because they never develop the ability to even think about these things, or the mindset to open up to what might be possible. So with an anti-fragile mindset, you actually take your value to the company exponentially higher, and you take your value to the marketplace exponentially higher. And with an anti-fragile way of operating or way of being as a leader, you can use uncertainty as the doorway to a radical reset and a more sustainable way of navigating change. And if I sound at all excited about this, it's because supporting leaders to have an anti-fragile way of leading is really my favorite place to play. Okay, so I promised you some outcomes today. Let's revisit them. So you should now have an understanding of what to expect from your team as you face COVID-19. And that means you know what to expect in terms of the feelings and perspectives and experiences that they all had, and how to actually navigate that as people come back together and continue to work together as a team. You know how to instill confidence, which is by meeting them where they are, which is really meaning safety, certainty, and direction. And how to drive alignment by focusing on bringing the team together in a really strong and collaborative way. You'll also get some more nuts and bolts on how to navigate that in an action guide that I'm going to give you access to. You know how to stay resilient in the face of uncertainty, how to take care of yourself first with self-care, self-compassion, and self-awareness. And you even know what it means to go beyond resilience into anti-fragility. You know that weekly team meetings and weekly one-on-ones, along with clear, consistent communication, are non-negotiables to help keep everyone moving forward. You know now that as a leader, you need to be bringing more strategic thinking to the table, more innovation, and an anti-fragile mindset and way of operating to make yourself indispensable and increase your impact and influence with your team and company. And as a bonus, I've provided you with a complimentary strategy session where you can get additional one-on-one help with your unique business concerns and goals. So I think we've done a pretty good job on these outcomes. Again, I just want to remind you that I am offering a free strategy session. This is a 2020 pivot and alignment strategy session for qualified businesses. So if you are interested in applying, you can do that at happyhealthyleaders.com/COVID-19. And if you are listening to the replay, then again, you're going to find this on the page already. The same thing with the strategic action guide that I just mentioned. If you are interested in getting that, You can find that at www.happyhealthyleaders.com/COVID-19 or on the same page if you are watching the replay. All right, so practical steps for you to take now. The first one is to download the presentation slides, which I've provided, and also the strategic pivot action guide. And you can do that at the URL that I've mentioned, or right below the video player if you're watching the replay. And also to apply for the 2020 Pivot and Alignment Strategy session so that you can get the mentoring and coaching that you actually need in order to get through COVID-19 and any subsequent crises that follow. And step 3 is really to turn this crisis into an opportunity to thrive for you, your team, and your company. So I want to thank you so much. But really, I want you to take a moment right now to just acknowledge yourself for your commitment, for your caring, and for the work that you've been doing as a leader. You have a lot of reason to feel proud, and it's been hard. It's been hard for you. It's been hard for everyone. But right now is a time to celebrate the successes that you have had so far and to start thinking about how you want to go forward. So as a next step, just go ahead and get to that URL, download the information, and apply for a strategy session to get the help you need. Thanks again, and it's been a pleasure.